Hello, it's YFFR On Air. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Eric, and we're here together, but this episode doesn't have me in it at all.
No, it does not. There's some episodes without me. That's okay. We go
Yeah,
back and forth.
the secret's out of the bag, though, that these intros are recorded another day, another
think
time.
listen, I think everyone knows that. Like if you listen to Armchair Expert, if you listen, they do it later and they reflect back. It's fair. It's okay. No one thinks we're strapped to our desk doing interviews all day long, as I'm sure they see by the quality of these podcasts.
Luckily enough, you could, if you wanted to go watch them, you can. They are live. They are not live, but they are. You can see the
Record on YouTube.
video on
Yeah.
YouTube if
Yeah.
you're very curious about seeing what our clothes are.
Seeing that,
The
like, she's like, oh,
background.
Olivia's not wearing a bra. She's at a stoplight recording this. So I think we're gonna start doing a little segment called like Olivia's gripes and grievances.
Do we have time for that on the intros?
Well, they'll be divided up into several, but
So you're going to record grievances for 2 weeks. So the people get your last 2 weeks of gripes.
Yeah. So here's my grievance. And I wonder how many people use Facebook Marketplace. I mean, we moved recently. So I've been used because you get good stuff. I mean, you get.
You've been very productive this time around. I feel like this time has been the best time, but
Well, you have to kiss a lot of frogs.
I don't touch Facebook Marketplace because it's a lot of frogs.
It's a lot of frogs. The reason I like it is the furniture is already put together, so it's not like buying it and then you have to put it together for us. Like it, you can get some good pieces.
Yeah, I mean, you got the one that was the $150 like entertainment stand, and I was fully prepared to spend like $700 on Wayfair for a piece of garbage. So that was super cool.
So there are some wins, but let me tell you what's recently happened to me that I don't know. There needs to be some Facebook Marketplace what do you call it? Not protocols, but etiquette. Yes, exactly. If I say to you, okay, I'm getting in my car to go there, it's going to take me 30 minutes because I live 30 minutes away. And then 15 minutes later, you said, oh, just sold it. I mean, like, I know they need to sell it to the first come, first serve, I guess. Right. But also there's just this.
Yeah, so I guess the only way you could have done that is if you could like pay them, but you're not going to
Upfront.
pay the money without seeing it.
Well, right, exactly. And so I don't know. It happened like twice in a row that I kind of went out of my way. Like I emptied our car to make room for this whatever piece. And I'm like, great, I'll be there. Oh, and this leather chair I wanted to pick it up on today, like when it was today. I said, I'll pick it up today. And she said, sorry, we're golfing. Can you come tomorrow? And I was like, sure. But we couldn't come till after 4:30. And so I texted her and said, okay, I can be there at 4:30. And she said, oh, someone's coming at 2 to pick it up. Sorry. Like, I don't know. I take a break. I take a 24-hour break and breather from people. I mean, it's just
that's what sets you over the edge.
First of all, any gripe or grievance is centered around people.
Yes, which being in a customer service based industry makes it interesting.
Yeah, I try to stay in my zone of genius as best I can, which is make the curriculum, teach the yoga,
and study impermanence.
And allow myself to cry when needed. Yeah, what's funny is this guest that we're having on right now.
That Olivia had on. I wasn't part of it. I don't know.
Yes.
In fact, I'm about to edit this episode. Dr. Cammy.
Dr. Cammy. And, we cut a lot of it out. I told you already that there has to be a lot of editing because Dr. Cammy, who is, she is a couples trauma therapist, trauma-informed therapist. She breaks cycles and toxic patterns, especially with couples, and she has a no BS approach, which is why we really wanted her on the podcast and why we really liked her. But man, I had a full-on therapy sesh with her. And so I asked you to cut some stuff out that was like too personal. We talk about you in this, by the way.
Should I be the one editing it?
You can, I
I'm
think,
about to hear the therapist's recession about me.
no, I think you can, it's nothing you don't know. But it's kind of talking about first responders in general and how each of them has their own way of, you know, the trauma response. And I talk about you just keep going, 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 going. You soldier through things. You're like, well, that's project's done. Let me build something now. You just keep going. Let me clean something. Let me cook now. Just always going. And so that's what we basically bring up. But you guys, she's straightforward. She has the same, I don't know, she lives in the same world that we do, which is we got the trauma. Let's heal from the trauma instead of just swimming in it. I think you guys are going to love what she has to say. So she has a book called Healing Trauma Together and partnerships, right? Like you and I have two different ways of how life impacts us and our response to stress and trauma in life. And then you partner up with people and you
Hope
have
for the best.
you hope for the best. You have to be compassionate to them and compassionate to yourself. And regardless of a romantic partnership, you're in a partnership with different people in the world and different relationships. And so, yeah, I think that everyone's going to get something really, really good out of this to be able to apply immediately. And you'll hear, yeah, basically you're just observing a,
Behind the scenes
a behind the
therapy.
scenes therapy session.
So good luck. Hold on. Buckle up for the ride, folks.
Yeah, because she's crazy in here between these two ears. She cray. Little Delulu, but you guys already know that. All right, so please enjoy Dr. Cammy and make sure to get her book, Healing Trauma Together. Welcome to Yoga for First Responders On Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead. As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun. But yeah, it's kind of this proactive, reactive thing, right? And I'm curious how you feel about this too, is that so much with mental health and, your specialization is relationships
Mhm.
is let's the reactive. Something's messed up and let's now work, fix it.
Mhm.
And we really try to focus on proactively training your nervous system, your brain, your
Mhm.
emotional regulation, your window of tolerance, so
Mhm.
that when shit hits the fan in life, you've been trained, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
So, speaking of my personal, things that are coming up in my life, it's that will I be nervous? Will I have, sweaty pits? Yes, because that's part of
Uh-huh.
the activation response.
Uh-huh.
And I know that I will be able to stay in my prefrontal cortex too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think even just having the ability to narrate, this is going to be a tough moment.
Yeah.
Here's what may show up for me in the
Yeah.
form of, physiologically, I might sweat more, my pupils may dilate. Even
Right.
just having that forethought offers a framework for you, your body, your partner, your family to be able to
Yeah.
step into.
Yeah.
Then when you're in it, it's not this giant shock. It's like, well, this is some of the stuff we've talked about.
Right. You already know it's going to happen and it's a normal part of the physiological response, right? So
Mhm.
that's the thing. It's like my husband and I were already talking about like, well, because we go different times. And we already know we're going to have sweaty pits, so dress accordingly because then you feel even worse if you have this like tight shirt on and so prepare for that. You're not shocked by it. You also don't judge yourself for it like, "Oh God, I'm nervous and I feel terrible." No, this is very normal when you are under in a situation that is not normal.
Mhm.
Um, and speaking of proactive, well, first of all, I just want to, we're already in it, but I wanted to ask if Marjorie was around.
Marjorie is very much around. I could
Okay.
do you want to
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your interest in Marjorie? Marjorie sits directly next to me
Okay.
as I do therapy all day. I'm
Yes.
happy to introduce Marjorie, but do you have
I just
anything
want
in
to
particular?
pause and I want anyone listening to this right now just to do your best guess of who and what you think we're talking about.
A small spoiler alert. She is not my great 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 grandmother.
Okay. Well, if we have people listening who know me well enough, they know I'm always here for the dogs.
Yay.
So I was looking at your Instagram, and so obviously pause at the cute picture that you have
Mhm.
with Marjorie, who is your personal dog, but also your professional
Yeah,
colleague.
she
Um,
totally is. Yes,
yeah, so tell me
yes,
a
yes.
little bit about that, and then we'll get into some more meat and potatoes.
Yes, I can send you many pictures of Margie. I could show you her right here if you want me to do that.
Drop her in.
All right, let me show you. I'm gonna have to take my filter off. So, um,
I get to see behind the actual curtain.
well, you know what? This is gonna be very funny for you to see. And we'll talk about this idea of the Johari window of like what we show to people, what we don't
Yes.
show. So I never in a million years expected us to start this way. So I will give you a little insight into what's actually
I
behind
love
here,
that. I
which
love it.
is my closet, which is where I
Yes.
work.
Thank you. Thank you. This is actually making me feel so much better too,
Yeah,
because I don't know how much we're gonna edit out from the beginning. So if we did edit this out, I am not home. I am sitting
yeah,
in on the floor. Like this is
yes,
the closet right here.
yeah,
I've locked my toddler out with my parents so that I
yes,
don't go in. So
yes,
it's nice to also have that relatability,
yeah,
together. So yeah.
totally. And that we'll kind of intertwine this in with couples and first responders. And this is like a living example of vulnerability.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Because I easily could have said, oh, Marjorie's just lied, right? And
Wow.
been like, oh,
Yeah.
she's not here, she's somewhere else. Or, hey, why don't I show you pictures of Marjorie and I'll screen share them with like this
Great.
perfect
Yeah.
background. But like, this is vulnerability. And
Well, because that's the thing. It's like when you showed up, you're very put together, you look great, you do your virtual background, and that is
yeah,
awesome too. And then but also it makes me, at first like, oh shit, I look so unprofessional. I want her to know that I am like here for it. And
yeah,
so, it's just interesting to see how we do that ego dance, sometimes
totally.
too. Yeah.
And what's interesting and could be is very parallel with couples is I also am usually very, very informal
Hmm.
and was intimidated
Yeah.
about doing my first podcast or one of my early ones.
Yeah.
And so dressed up a little bit more. So it's
Yeah.
like than I normally would. So sometimes there's like that interpersonal dance of like,
Totally.
like I was trying to show up as best I could for you. You were trying to show up as best you could for me. And if we hadn't talked about it, we could have inadvertently um not offended, but created some friction between us,
Well, and
you know?
stories, right? Stories and
Stories.
assumptions that weren't true that are all based in, I mean, we're getting like, they're all based in how our little brains were molded,
Totally.
we
Yeah.
came and I
Yeah.
mean, I'm at my parents' house, so I'm seeing a lot of that right now.
Uh-huh. 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 Yeah.
So, back to
Okay.
March.
Okay. So that all roads lead to Marge.
Yeah. That's going to be the name of this episode, I think. Beauty. Look at the, oh, I like just got this like heart
Hey.
chest, like I wanted to like hold her.
She's
Oh,
very sweet. So this is Marjorie. Um, Marge, look,
Marjorie.
Marge.
I love how dogs do not trust like cameras and video and because they're like, this ain't natural. This is not right.
So Marjorie is a 25-pound beagle, so she's pretty on the smaller side. And we got her, my husband and I, we have two cats and we wanted to have another member of our little family. Um, and so we got her when she was just a puppy, maybe about 10 weeks old. And I knew I mean I was open to however Marjorie wanted to live her life, truly. Like if
Mhm.
she wanted to just hang at the house, we were open for anything. And one of the possibilities was that Margie could support people in our community.
Mhm.
And so I started just gently training her to be a community-based support service animal,
Yeah.
emotional support animal, right around the age 10 weeks old.
Got
Um, so she got that training, and then we did even more formal training. We did additional training through the SPCA,
Mhm.
and we did additional training through UCSF UCSF hospital system in San Francisco
So you're in the Bay Area?
in SF.
Okay, because I grew up in San Jose, in
Oh,
Santa Cruz
wow.
and
And
San
where are
Jose
you
area.
now?
Well, I live in New Mexico, but I'm in
Okay.
Colorado at my parents' house right now.
Okay. Okay. Those are very different regions with very different.
Oh, girl, I was 14 and I went to boarding school in North Carolina. 18 years old, I moved to New York City. I was on tour with a Broadway show for a year. I was a showgirl in Las Vegas. Then I moved to LA,
Whoa.
got married, moved to Iowa, got divorced, met my new husband, moved to Colorado, then New Mexico. I mean, it's insane.
It sounds like it. And that also, it causes me to think of I'll finish my thought about Marjorie in a second, but we should come back to this like concept of like the multiplicity of identities.
Hmm.
Because you just listed all these different, I don't want to assume they're fragmented, but all
Yeah,
these different parts of who you
yeah,
are,
yeah,
and they all had to somehow be intertwined or are
yeah.
intertwining.
It does feel like different people,
Yeah,
often.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then here and now this is the work I do, but I was a showgirl. Like, it's so yeah,
yeah.
so interesting. Yeah, so and it's funny because I wanted my previous dog, Abby, to be a therapy dog and kind of be with me on the yoga for first responders journey. But unfortunately, she hurt her back right before she was supposed to start therapy
Oh,
school, and she was semi-paralyzed, so we didn't continue that journey. Um, so okay, so 10, how old is Marjorie now?
she's 4.
She's 4. So she's been doing this. This is her calling.
She definitely, yeah, I mean, when we first got her, and this is the whole nature nurture. I'm not really sure which had a bigger influence, but let's say with they're all integrated,
Mm.
and um, she definitely was drawn to people. Um, Part of our training with her was helping her identify when someone may be sad, which initially started just through crying, people who were crying. I would just like tap her a couple times while we were in therapy so she could kind of connect, like, this is
Yeah.
tearfulness, this is happening. So we just started, and she's still pretty much singularly around tearfulness and sadness. She now has some behavioral commands, but then also an empathic desire to
Yeah.
act those out. Like when someone's crying or when they're upset, she will go up to them and put her paw on their hand and she'll get into their lap. So we started just very gently, like that. Marjorie is extremely connected to humans, more so like in a more visceral way than animals.
Yeah.
But she will do the same for humans and animals. So I just started with that. And then as we got more training, we started moving into like higher acuity places. So
Mhm.
she had to have more training, for example, to volunteer at the PICU, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit at UCSF. because there's kids, like little toddlers with a lot of wires and,
Mhm.
cords, and we couldn't have Marjorie eating, jumping. And
Right, right, yeah.
so we've gradually increased her ability to engage and support people like in different settings and different levels of acuity. We've also gone into inpatient psychiatric settings where one of the primary goals for safety,
Mhm.
and then a concurrent primary, maybe secondary goal is symptom management, just like people who are like actively psychotic or in the early stages of schizophrenia. So we would go in and there would be people at all stages of recovery and inpatient mental health, which, you're essentially discharged following stabilization. So that was the best. And then
Yeah.
everything up to that. And what we did there is just such a beautiful thing. Because most people they really didn't have language aside, they didn't have coherent linear language that we could follow.
Mhm.
So they would just hold March, and I would help them like basically touch their hand, which is great because that's attachment and relation and mirroring neurons. Put their hand on Margie's heart. I,
Ah,
I would hold, and then we would breathe along and kind of sync with the animal. Oh, the
love
animal
that.
meaning Margie.
Yeah.
So like at some point at one point in that 90 seconds, all three of us, in if you're including a partner, right? Maybe the partners are too, are all synced breathing, synced heart rates with this sentient being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
This goes so hand in hand with how people have used our tools too. We just
awesome.
got one of our trainees who's becoming an instructor said that they used our breathing techniques
Hmm.
on a couple of, I think they were teenagers who had just gone through a
Yeah.
really bad car accident,
Uh-huh.
was able to calm their breath with hands on chests and breathing. And
Uh-huh.
I know a lot of people who do equine therapy, and it's the same thing, really
Same thing.
syncing with the horse. I mean, I just think that animal stuff is just, I mean, and that's what my old dog used to do for me is even when she was a little puppy, I was in a horrible relationship, and so I would cry a lot, and she would come up to me and look me in the eye and shake because I knew
Yes.
she wanted to help, she wanted to connect.
Yes.
And I looked at her, and I mean, she was, she meant so much to me. So I just think that is such
Oh,
an awesome tool. And I always fangirl over the dogs. Um,
yeah.
it's so cool. Everything like, I everything that from what I know about you, are your approach is so similar to our approach.
It totally is.
Yeah, because what I love about what you do is how much you say, "Hey, these hardships have come up, the trauma, whatever. Let's not just heal it or talk about it or whatever, but let's turn it into your superpower." you know?
Totally.
And that's exactly so our whole thing is processing stress and turning it into resilience, being an
Yeah.
alchemist, right?
Yeah.
That's our whole approach. And we're like, okay, this happened. So if you are working with us, you are going to be transforming it. And part of that is validating, obviously, and like all of that. But then we gotta start moving it and,
Yes.
somatically, neurologically, like mentally, all of those things. Um,
Yes.
so I love that that's your approach. And the other thing I love too is we start off by talking about proactive and reactive.
Uh-huh.
And so my husband was a firefighter
Mm.
and he is retired now.
Mhm.
And we both came from divorces. So we were divorced previously. And so when we approached our relationship just dating, we both read the John Gottman book,
Oh,
The Seven Principles of Making Marriage.
very powerful.
Mhm. And we're like, why don't we do this proactively? And we also did relationship counseling when we were in the honeymoon stage, like when we were,
So wise.
Yeah. And so
So
we
wise.
really started off our relationship with tools, and we started off our relationship with knowing the pitfalls and this and that. So I'm very proud of us that we took that, proactive approach.
Uh-huh.
He was also on his peer support team for fire service. He has written a book about stoicism and fire service. So he was he was very open about going to see counseling and stuff when counselors when he was on the fire service, which then gave license to the other firefighters to follow suit. So I'm very fortunate that my partnership and him having been in public safety hasn't fallen into a lot of the pitfalls that we'll talk about.
Uh-huh.
Uh, One thing I do say, and I'm sure he's fine with me saying this because he's talked about it.
Yeah.
Ironically, this is about, partnerships and relationships. And normally he and I do this together, this podcast, but he's driving up here from Albuquerque to meet me in Colorado, so he couldn't be.
Yeah.
It would have been better if he could have been here to talk
That's
more about it.
okay.
But
Yeah.
maybe what we'll do is he'll listen to our conversation and then he'll add his reflections afterwards. But um,
I would totally invite that.
that'd be so cool. So, but one thing that I see from his fire service stuff, and he will fully admit this, is this man is a man, his love language is act of service,
Uh-huh.
and he will not stop serving. He will not stop taking care of business. And he's a dream, and I am so grateful that shit gets done, but he won't stop.
Mm.
So I want to be
Yeah.
like, sit on the couch with me, snuggle.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
worry about the trash going out. Don't worry about,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when I've asked him about this before, because I'm someone who needs to stop more. I'm someone who needs to take care of my mental health. m- It seemingly more like I'll tell him I need to journal, I need to be by myself, whatever. And one time I kind of got upset and I was like, why? What's wrong with me that I'm the one that always has to journal? Am I, and like, you just
Uh-huh.
seem to live. And he actually said to me, I think I don't stop because if I stop, I'll think about everything I've seen in my career.
Mm. Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I'm just not, maybe I probably should do what you're doing,
Uh-huh.
but I'm
Uh-huh.
just busting through life to like
Hmm.
not think about it. Anyway,
Hmm.
all right.
Hmm.
So that's kind of like my relation here. But the first question I want to ask you before we get into it. Okay.
And
Unless you have something to add, go ahead.
yeah, no, just a reflection on what you shared. I think that, one of the most common things that brings people into therapy, first responders, trauma survivors in general, is either an inability or a inability, let's just say inability or unwillingness or fear to slow down
Hmm.
or to rev up.
Mm,
So that really stuck in psychological, physical paralysis, like just being really stuck, even physically feeling like I cannot move,
yeah.
all the way to I have to keep moving.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
sort of the undergirding of both of these is coping,
Yeah.
because on each end of now, it may be our good argument that it's like maladaptive, but we get to that in a minute. But coping on either side provides something. And generally, if you're downregulated, you're going to be more dissociative,
Hmm.
daydreaming. If I stay in this cocoon, I won't have to face anything. And then the constant doing is I'm being productive. My work these could be I'm being productive. My worth is tied to what I can offer, what I can do, not what
That's
I've
my
been through.
that's my husband. Yes.
Yeah, and then that's the superpower part is so many of I mean, I can't even think of an example where there wasn't an additive approach.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, we want you to keep doing stuff. We
Yeah.
want you to
Yeah.
keep knowing how to disengage, but we also want to add, can you slow down? Can you rev up? So you actually have a choice in the matter rather than it
Right.
choosing you. you
Well,
know?
and that really matches a healthy nervous system. A healthy nervous system should get pissed off when it's appropriate to be pissed off, and then
Yeah.
be able to come back down rather than stuck in anger or compassion fatigue where you can't get, And I also wonder if it's a control thing too, because I think about when people are resistant to yoga. You even talked about moving.
Uh-huh.
If you open up the fascia in my hip, I'm going to start to cry about
Oh,
whatever, right?
you are not alone there.
Yeah. So then they're going to say something silly about yoga, roll their eyes, but it's because they don't want to crack all of those things open. They will lose control.
Yes. Yes.
And so then you see that. I mean, I see that. I always say that whatever I see on the yoga mat is reflected in life. So if that is your how you respond to us at inviting you to do yoga and mindfulness, that's also probably your approach in your relationship and in your life as well, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and oh gosh, there was something that you said about but anyway, um,
So just speaking to that hip for a minute. So I do encourage clients to do yoga, massage, but with a therapeutic masseuse, or I do have I would say most of the women that I meet with have some issues around pelvic pain, vaginismus, and really finding an informed physical therapist.
Mhm.
But the most common place is kind of what you described is that psoas muscle.
Oh yeah, the hip flexor psoas. I
Yes.
mean, and I was like, think about it, even when you're startled, right?
Uh-huh.
You kind of hunker down this way. And the
Totally.
psoas grabs, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes. Yes.
that's just what it
Yes.
does. And so of course it's so tight. And I always say that yoga prepares you for the work that you do because we get people back in their prefrontal cortex. We kind of, wind out all of
Uh-huh.
the things somatically so that they're a little bit more open to, the different modalities,
Hmm. Hmm.
including, talk therapy and, things like that. They're open to it. So I just kind of learned this, and so would love to hear you explain it, is the difference between sort of acute trauma and complex trauma,
Oh, yeah, that's a
or
big
like
one.
complex PTSD or.
Yeah, so it's important to note that we're working really hard we just, I think, as trauma therapists, to get complex trauma, complex PTSD in the DSM.
Uh-huh.
Currently it's PTSD, acute and chronic, but the chronic one doesn't necessarily encompass what needs to be there for complex trauma. But let's just start with the basic definitions. So when you think of acute trauma, it's just a single distressing event that basically overwhelms the nervous system. So
Mhm.
I also just want to make a note and be interested to hear if anyone like comments on this podcast or whatever, that there's been a lot of critique in the last, I would say, 5 to 8 years around the diffuse definition of trauma. Like everything seems like it's traumatic,
Right,
right? Oh, my best friend told me she didn't like my husband. I'm traumatized.
right, right.
And so I think the arguments for why that's problematic are obvious, but I just want to note that I think in many ways it's very good, because if you the how I understand trauma, and many clinicians, just that we're not doing randomized controlled trial studies, right? We're clinicians, we're helping people move through their life. And I think many people are understanding trauma as a moment where their nervous system could not handle what was in front of them.
Mhm.
So for some people, they can go in and they can go to war, they can see and come back and not have a diagnosis of PTSD.
Right.
But for another person at the age of 5, if in a 6-month period their parents got divorced, they moved, their best friend died in a car accident, and they got their first F on their spelling test, that first F on their spelling test could be traumatic when we define it as an overwhelmed nervous system, and then the sequelae will follow. So we
Yeah.
just kind of want to note that before going into this. So we think of acute trauma as just a single distressing event that overwhelms the nervous system, and
Mhm.
it negatively impacts one or more core domains of life: physical well-being, emotional well-being, friendships, parenting. These are the things you normally see on TV: a car accident, a tsunami, you getting like robbed at gunpoint at an ATM, a medical emergency, like sudden death of someone you love. So these are all acute traumas.
Mhm.
Um, they can lead to PTSD
Mhm.
if they're not processed. Um, Most traumatic events, people don't have PTSD diagnoses, you know?
And I want to ask you about this because
Yeah.
this fascinated me when I learned this. I want to make sure I'm sort of I kind of explain it in layman's terms. Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.